It is my honor and privilege to introduce our moderator for this event, Dr. Angela Marie Smith. Dr. Smith is an associate professor in English and gender studies. She is the director of disability studies at the University of Utah and co-chair of the university's Universal Design and Access Committee. Dr. Smith teaches and researches on the topic of disability and disability representation in film and popular media. She is the author of Hideous Progeny, Disability, Eugenics, and Classic Horror Cinemas, published by Columbia in 2011, and several articles on embodiment and visual media. Thank you. Please help me welcome Dr. Angela Smith.
Thank you, Abdul Khaliq. I am super excited to be here and welcome everyone to EDI's Day of Disability and Neurodiversity. My name is Angela Smith and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a white woman with straight dark hair and bangs wearing a dark blue shirt against a virtual background of the used Gardner Commons. And I am going to share my screen. My slide lists the title of today's event, Making It Accessible, Actions for Accessible Events, Presentations, Social Media, and Basic Web Design. Throughout my presentation, I'll verbally convey all of the information listed on my slides. As this slide notes, I am an associate professor of English and Gender Studies, director of Disability Studies, and co-chair of the university's Universal Design and Access Committee. On this slide, I extend extreme gratitude to the team at EDI for making this event possible. Thank you especially to Eunice Contreras, Pamela Bishop, Kaya Aman, Jen Rosio, and Vice President Mary Ann Villarreal. Thank you also to today's presenters for sharing your wisdom. Today's presentations will take just under an hour. Sorry, I need to find my slide. I have an outline of the presentations and I'll come back to this, but at that time we'll have a half hour to take questions. You may put questions into the chat during the presentation and we'll do our best to get to them during the Q&A. At that time, we'll also invite people to ask questions verbally by raising their virtual hand. So again, you can put them in the chat during presentations and we'll try to work through some of those or all of those during the Q&A at the end. We'll also take verbal questions during the Q&A. Today's panelists have created a resource document with links and further information relevant to each presenter's topic. So I'll drop that document into the chat a few times, along with a few other relevant links. It will be posted also on the EDI site, along with the video and transcript of the event. So here's an outline of the presentation order today. Each of today's presenters will introduce themselves. As listed on the slide, we'll begin with Lillian Duong, speaking as a user of accessibility technology. Then Barb Iannucci will cover basic web accessibility. Andy Thompson, social media accessibility. Chris Green, video captioning. Eunice Contreras, events accessibility. And Jen Rosio, design accessibility. I will discuss making presentations accessible and conclude with some comments on disability language. We'll then take questions and open up for discussion. Before the presentations, I want to begin with thoughts on accessibility from two disability activists. I'm going to go back. First, in a recent tweet, Gregory Mansfield, a wheelchair user, writes, "Disabled people are still put in the untenable position of having to ask non-disabled people, can I enter? Can I participate? More often than not, the answer is no." Mansfield's tweet points to the constant labor required of disabled people to ask or plead for accessibility and the frequent outcome of such requests, denied access and exclusion. Second, activist Mia Mingus, in a 2017 blog post, puts forward the concept of access intimacy. She states, Access intimacy is that elusive, hard to describe feeling when someone else gets your access needs. When access intimacy is present, the most powerful part is having someone to navigate access in ableism with. It is knowing that someone else is willing to be with me in the never-ending and ever-changing daily obstacle course that is navigating an inaccessible world. Mingus continues, liberatory access demands that the responsibility for access shifts from being an individual responsibility to a collective responsibility. Liberatory access both resists against the world we don't want and actively builds the world we do want. Today's panel was created in the spirit of collective responsibility and building the world we want. Our presenters will provide small actions we can take to make communications and events more accessible. Ideally, we can take these actions consistently and proactively, while also understanding that accessibility work is ongoing, responsive, and sometimes messy. A reminder to our panelists that with great apologies, I will unmute and make interrupting noises to signal when your time is up. With that, I will hand over to our first presenter, Lillian Duong.
Thank you so much, Angela. I first want to introduce myself. I am Lillian Duong. I am a Vietnamese American with long black hair and bangs. I am wearing a white shirt and a blazer for those of you who are visually impaired, just like I am. I'm here to explain the uses of technology with disability, but I am going to be a bit more personal and a bit more honest. I have been a student at the University of Utah for 6 years, and the first time I was diagnosed with my disability was the first time I entered college. And I want to remind faculty, and I want to remind everyone, disability is different, and your disability journey is going to be different from anyone else's. When I entered college, I remember sitting with my CDA advisor and her looking at me and asking, what do you need as someone with your disability? And I looked at her with a blank face. I had no idea what I needed. And the questions that were asked to me didn't provide me with the assurance that I knew what I needed. And so I sat down with CDA Tech, and we went through multiple different technologies. For instance, I'm holding right now a black pen that records notes for me in class, giving me more time at home so I can re-listen to the lecture. However, the menu that is connected to my computer with the pen is inaccessible to me because I am visually impaired. And this goes with a bunch of the technology that is provided to students who have disabilities. I remember getting one of those machines that helps you look at documentation so that they're enlarged. And I remember my CDA Tech giving me the manual, and the manual itself did not have enlarged print. So for me to know how to use the system, the actual manual itself was inaccessible. I'm very lucky to have that CDA Tech teach me how to use the system without using the manual itself, because in itself, it is inaccessible to me without being able to see that manual. And this is just a repeated occurrence over and over and over, trying to figure out how you are going to use the technology that is provided for you, how to advocate for yourself. That is a journey that no one teaches you when you get into university, when you figure out your disability. You're not born with this knowledge. Everything that you do, you need to learn. You are not going to learn how to walk when you are born. You are taught that. You are learning it slowly. And that's the same thing with your disability. It's going to be different for everyone. And you can find those sources, and it's good for you to have those sources, but you need to seek them out. One of the sources that I had was the Division of the Blind and Visually Impaired that the state of Utah provides, and that took me so many different routes to find that source, to teach me how to use screen readers like Kurzweil and JAWS, which are screen readers that help you read your computer screen. I, as someone who was new to my disability, could not understand the voices that were coming in through my headphones describing my computer screen. I had such a hard time getting used to it. And the only thing that was told to me over and over again was, you will. And that's not comforting. Because even now, I still have a hard time listening to it. We have to know how to be patient with students, to be able to give them that time to learn these things, but we don't as a university. And that's not fair for students who are new to their disability, who are now learning a new way of life. But now here we are, we're still striving, we're still standing, and it might take us a little longer, but we're still trying to figure it out. We're still trying to figure out who we are and what our disabilities are. And that's how we make a stand. And as someone, as a representative, not knowing everyone's story with disability, this is mine, and this is mine to reach out to anyone who can relate. Disabilities are hard. Understanding them are hard. Knowing who you are is hard. So give us the voice, give us the time. Let me give you the voice. Let me give you the time to say, you have a right to understand yourself and your disability. You have the right to get that time to learn the technology, not only the technology, but yourself and who you are now with the disabilities that you have. And with that, I hope that I can open the view for the rest of the presenters to teach you about the technologies that are available and that can be provided. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
My name is Andy Thompson, social media manager for the University of Utah in the University Marketing and Communications office. I'm a white man with little to no hair, sitting in front of a David Mickle painting here in our conference room. The painting depicts the University of Utah campus in the background here. But I will get started on some social media accessibility tips. And let me share my screen. Okay, so I'll get started with alt text. This is probably one of the more easy things to do as far as adding accessibility to your social media. And it is super important because social media is very image driven. Alt text adds descriptions to your photos that go beyond just the description of your social media post. And so this first one you see, and it does, all the major platforms have this capability: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I've shared on my screen here, I've got screenshots of each of the major platforms. The first one's Instagram. And what you see is when we are posting, kind of on the back end, the social media practitioner has the ability to add accessibility information. And then, so in that screenshot depicted is the accessibility menus open, and then there are the photos that we're sharing along with the alt text for each photo. And those do vary from the description we put in the regular post. So that is Instagram. This is what it looks like on Facebook. You know, again, for those that are running social media accounts on campus for your various departments, this is fairly, it's very pretty, excuse me, it's pretty intuitive as far as where and how to add alt text. But if you do have any questions, I can run through it with you individually after this, and we will have resources available, of course. So this is where you would add the alt text on Facebook. This is how you do it on LinkedIn. And then the next one is Twitter. And I just want to call out Twitter a little bit because it is a little different. The other three, it's not as apparent that alt text has been added, but on Twitter, you know, if you go to your Twitter timeline, you'll see images from users, and you will see this little alt button in the lower left corner, and that's available to the public, and you don't need a screen reader to see that. So that indicates you've taken the time to add alt text, but then also a user can click on that alt text, see the image description. And so this example screenshot is of a beautiful shot of Rice Eccles Stadium that we took from our AirMed helicopter during a football game. The sun is setting to the, you can see the sun, the sunlight reflecting off the Wasatch Mountains. So my tweet is just Wide Shot Wednesday with a heart eyes emoji, but the image description reads: a wide angle photograph looking east from a helicopter of Rice Eccles Stadium and the University of Utah campus. The sun is reflecting off the Wasatch foothills in the background. So this allows, it lets you convey a lot more information on Twitter than you're normally allotted with the 288 or 280 character limit. So it's an advantage. I mean, aside from accessibility, it's an advantage to add more information. And that also helps with your SEO. So when people are searching, this information will appear, or it can appear in various Google and Twitter searches. And that applies to Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Even though it's not super readily viewable on the other three platforms, the SEO, it still counts towards your search engine optimization. So that's alt text, fairly easy to do. Please, everyone, I recommend doing it for all our sakes. The next one is adding captions to video, and I know Chris Green will talk more about this in depth, but I'm just going to show you how it can be done on like Instagram Story and TikTok. This first one is Instagram Story, and they've done a great job, all the platforms, TikTok included, of making captioning very easy to add. For Instagram Story, there's a little sticker up in the top, or an icon up in the top, where you can click that, and then a bevy of options come up. One of them is add captions, and here's an example of how that's done.
Hello, Utah. My name is Sophia, and I'm the director of View from the U Productions. Today, we're doing an Instagram takeover to show you what goes on behind the scenes on our productions, and also to show you what View from the U is really about. So stay tuned.
So Instagram's pretty good. They're about 90% correct on most of the captioning, but you can go in there and edit things, you know, if they have a name wrong or labels wrong. And not only, again, does this help with accessibility, but this just helps your social media overall, where, you know, a lot of people have their phones on mute or have their social media on mute, and they see, you know, so they're not hearing it, but they see the captions, and they're more likely to stay on your content and watch more of it and engage with it. This is more kind of straightforward. This is a television spot that are the one in the middle that our videography team did. And this is where we burned the captions into the actual video.
You're in Paris with a group from the University of Utah, studying intellectual traditions like Rene Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." So deep. Then it suddenly hits you.
I'm only a freshman.
We call that Utah Fresh. Do real-world research. Go learn abroad. Join an on-campus living team. Yes, our freshman experience is refreshingly different. Oh, happy.
And then this next one, I don't know if you can see it with the way the Zoom's set up with people on the side, but this is TikTok.
Appreciate. Yeah. Making TikToks? No. It's going on my Tumblr page. Enjoy the food. Do you want a fork? Where's this from? Cafe Mamai. Have a good one.
Oh.
College has been tough. In the season of we're going to be feeding.
So that's an example of where we can also edit the captions within TikTok. So one of our students, he added those subtitles himself, but then TikTok also has its own closed captioning service where you can then go edit. And then this is what, like, Cafe Mamai came up, and TikTok didn't pick up the translation there, so we were able to go in and add that.
You are at 7 minutes, Andy.
Okay. I won't go over this traditional videos because I know that captioning traditional videos, because Chris will do it. I do just want to touch on this camel casing really quick. What is it? It's the capitalization of the first letter of each word of a hashtag or username when applicable. So examples: Native American Heritage Month was just November. You can see the Native American Heritage, the first letter of each word is capitalized. And then also in usernames. So, like, you can't do this on Instagram because it does force you to do all small caps, but on Twitter you can. So U of U Health is a great example. Utah Red Zone is a great example, where the first letter of those of the username is capitalized. So thank you for the opportunity.
Hello, my name is Barbara Iannucci. I am the Director of Content Management and Usability, which is a long way to say that my group works on websites and interfaces. We support people updating their website, and we also focus on the usability of the applications coming out of UIT. So I am going to talk today about making websites accessible. Whenever I work with people on making their websites accessible, I always make sure that they understand why that they should do it. And the most prevalent reason is that it's the law. It's written into the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there have been a lot of high profile, very costly lawsuits leveled against higher ed institutions for their websites not being accessible. So no one really wants to be in a position of costing the university either reputation or money. So it's a good motivator. But I will say there are a lot of other reasons to make your website accessible. A lot of people will say, you know, people with disabilities is such a small percentage of our website audience. I just can't, I can't focus on such a small group. And my answer to that is, and I think this was mentioned earlier, 1 in 4 adults actually has a disability in the United States. And if you think about it, unless the unthinkable happens first, every one of us is going to have a disability at some point as we age. So I think that percentage of people with disabilities really surprises people. The other reasons why practicing accessibility helps with your website is obviously it's more inclusive. And that's been, a big buzzword lately: EDI, diversity, inclusivity. And it's the right thing to do. But it also inadvertently impacts just general usability of your website. And it also lends itself to better SEO. A lot of the practices with website accessibility is getting your site readable by screen readers. Screen readers read the pages very similarly to search engines. So if you improve things for screen readers, you automatically improve things for search engines. It's important to understand the types of disabilities of people that will be using your website. So there are visual disabilities, which include color blindness and just low vision, blindness. Auditory is deafness or just difficulty hearing. Motor skills are difficulty using a mouse, difficulty getting their mouse over small images or buttons on the screen. Cognitive is disabilities are when people are easily distracted, they can't retain large amounts of information. And then there are vestibular orders that are like seizures that happen from flashing lights. So it's good to be aware of all of the disabilities that you have to account for when working on your websites. So it's very important to understand HTML markup. I know a lot of people just coming into the website world think that HTML tags are for making things look a certain way. So for example, headings makes text bigger. Paragraphs makes it normal. But you really have to think about the meaning of those tags, because screen readers, search engines, they use that meaning to interpret your page. So lean on CSS for styling, not HTML. Think about the meaning of the tags. So headings versus paragraphs versus lists. And then you want to think about things like logical heading levels. So you don't want to jump straight from an H1 to an H4 because you think the H4 looks better or the smaller text looks better. It's important to understand colors and contrast. A significant portion of the population is colorblind. It can really impact readability for even people that don't have color blindness. There are some very problematic color combinations, even for people without color blindness. So a good rule of thumb is to just always use very high contrast and use a contrast checker. And this even goes for text in images. So you always want to check that and make sure that the contrast is sufficient. It's important to understand WCAG. So that stands for the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. It was put together by the World Wide Web Consortium. It's basically the guidelines that are the industry standard. People typically aim for WCAG 2.0 level AA, which is acceptable compliance. The most recent version of WCAG is 2.1. I feel like people are kind of transitioning right now from 2.0 to 2.1, but most regulatory guidelines lean on WCAG 2.0. I won't go through all of these, but I just wanted to include some of the high level ones. No blinking, obviously, for the people with seizures. Another important one here is to use descriptive links. So if all of your links say click here, then when someone goes into screen reader mode or a screen reader in link mode, all they'll hear is click here, click here, click here. And that doesn't give them a lot of information about where the link is going. So it's very important to know how to test your website for accessibility so that you can figure out if you how much compliance you have with your website. So my first tip is to try to navigate the website without a mouse. A lot of people with motor skills will use different kinds of mouses. And then people with vision problems will use the tab key to navigate around the page. It's really important that people include a skip to content at the very beginning of the page so that if someone wants to bypass the lengthy navigation, they can get straight to the content. What you want to do is make sure you can interact with your website the way anyone would. And so you want to make sure you can get to all the visually hidden content. So like in tabs or other interactive content. You just really want to make sure that the experience is similar.
You're at 7 minutes, Barb.
Oh boy. Okay, use a screen reader and just make sure you can understand your content. Here are some automated tools, but don't rely on automated tools. You really need to manually test your sites because automated tools only uncover a fraction of the problems. Just a couple tips for success. Build it in at the very beginning. It's much more easier to build it from the ground up rather than go in and retrofit a website afterwards. Be aware of quick fixes and shortcuts. So a lot of companies are selling accessibility overlays as an easy way to address accessibility on your site, but they really, a lot of times they just give the illusion that you're focusing on accessibility. And they are also not a comparable experience for what the rest of the audience is experiencing. And here are some resources. They are in the document that Angela sent out, except I missed putting the contrast checker on there. So that's it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Chris Green from the Center for Disability and Access in Student Affairs. I actually, my presentation was about making your own captions. This is a question we get all the time from people is, I've got a 20-minute video. I don't want to pay $40 for somebody to make captions. How do I do it? That's my presentation. I was really interested though in a question in the chat, and I wanted to jump on that really quick though, because the question said about camel casing. What about URLs? Morgan's question, is it best to put studentaffairs.utah.edu in camel case? Interesting question. As far as I know, the capitalization in a domain address such as studentaffairs.utah.edu, capitalization does not matter in that part of the web address, but if you have your slash and then page title after that, capitalization does matter after that in the URL. So I don't know, you could do it that way, but you wouldn't want to change any camel cases, or you wouldn't want to do any camel casing in any particular page address after that. We're going to leave the rest of the link as it is, but could do it. That's just my thought about that question. I will jump back to making your own captions. So Andy covered some captions, but what are captions? If you're not familiar with what captions are, they're time synchronized text transcription of audio tracks on videos. You've seen them at the bottom of the video. You can turn them on and off. Yeah, some video players let you customize the settings. They are used by all sorts of people and very helpful. How do they work? Traditionally, captions are stored in a text file. We typically use a text file called an SRT file. And I can show you an example of an SRT file right here. It's a simple text file. It stores the number of the caption. It stores a time code of when the caption appears. So this would be from 0 seconds to 5 seconds. And then it shows the text that appears in the caption in that time. You can edit this file directly to change captions, and then most video players have a feature that you can upload this file to the video to get the captions to play. So how do you make your own captions for free? Well, you utilize ASR or automatic speech recognition technologies. This is also called auto captions. Perfect example everybody's probably familiar with is YouTube. You have auto captions on all sorts of YouTube videos. The second step to making your own captions would be to download these ASR, these auto captions files, and correct text errors and formatting errors. And then the third step would be to upload the corrected file to the video. So a question we hear often too is, are auto caption files good enough? Are they, I'll let you decide. This is my fake hashtag, auto caption fails. We love it. So on the top, I have what the auto caption said, and then at the bottom, what the actual audio said. So here's a good one. Banana stated the IPO. That's what the auto caption said. But what it really said was, but not necessarily the people. Auto caption said the ball trees. It really said laboratories. Auto caption said, I'm really bad with grandma. But it really said, I'm really bad with grammar. So you can see that you get a range of like really bad translations to things like grandma and grammar, which are quite close. So correcting the errors is important in auto captions files. They are typically about 75 to 85% accurate. And especially for academic content, 75 to 85% is not going to cut it for a lot of students and a lot of people who use captions. All right, so how can you make your own captions? Well, a couple of tools that university, anyone with a unit and CIS password has access to the Kaltura Media Space website. If you're on Canvas, you'll recognize this as your My Media page as well on Canvas. So the URL is mediaspace.utah.edu. When you log in, you'll see any videos in your media space. You can add new videos. You can upload YouTube videos, the Kaltura webcam screen capture, upload video files. So any video that gets uploaded here, after about a half hour, we'll have an auto captions file created by the Kaltura Reach captioning system. It'll be automatically attached and available. So from your page here to edit these, to correct them, I'm going to look for the pencil icon next to the video. Click that. It's going to take me to the edit video page. And below the video, we have a ribbon of tabs. The last one is captions. And here you can see the English auto-generated. This is an auto captions file. There's the SRT file. And the first option up here in the captions section is edit captions. Here's where you can, so in the edit captions page, you've got the easy little widget here, or to edit the text. It's very easy. Just go through. You can listen to it as you go. You also have, you can change the time code here to adjust the timing of the captions. This method can be a little bit difficult to get the timings right, but it's doable. Once the captions are edited, you can save the file, and from the previous page, you can download the file if you want to put that captions file somewhere else. That's one way. So a lot of the things that we see too on Canvas are YouTube videos that are being used for say a course, or if you want to make captions for someone else's YouTube video. It's not your channel. You don't have access to the auto captions file from YouTube. There's a couple of things that you can do. One is you can use MediaSpace again and add the YouTube video to your My Media page. It will let you put the URL in here. It will keep the video on your YouTube. As far as I know, even if the video owner on YouTube deletes the video, you still have access to it in your My Media. It will create an auto captions file that you can correct. There is another online service that I want to show.
You're right around 7 minutes,
Okay,
Chris.
this is This is amara.org. Amara is they take YouTube and Vimeo videos and put captions and translations over the videos. So if you go to amara.org, sign up for an account, you can search their videos. You can search through it. You can add new, if you have an account, you can add videos to, let's see, wrong place. You can add new YouTube videos to their service. They have a really nice captions editor, but it's great for searching for videos. So if you want to find something on YouTube that has translations or captions, this is a great service. I recommend it. If you're building a course and have YouTube videos, try to look for them on Amara to see if you have captions or translated versions. So once you get in, it'll show you over here if there's any subtitles or captions, and it'll tell you the languages. So a lot of videos have numerous languages. They also have an awesome subtitle editor that will let you change subtitles, adjust timings of the subtitles in a really easy way.
Chris, you're at the end of your time there.
Hey, we're done. Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about event accessibility. I'm, again, Eunice Contreras, and I'm part of EDI marketing and communications team. I'm the event manager. So I want to shortly talk about some planning for the event. So when you're planning for the event, make sure you choose your venue correctly. So make sure that you're going to visit your venue before. Make sure that accessibility is good, not only good, but great for people that have limited mobility. So make sure that parking is available close by, that they have ADA parking spots available near to the entrances, and that there's public transportation near the venue, and that public transportations have the correct ramps for people that use wheelchairs. Also make sure that they have accessible entrances so that the doors are wide enough for wheelchairs to go through, that they have ramps that when people have to turn, maybe on the ramp, there's enough space for them to turn. A lot, of course, of the event venues go with ADA and the law, like Mark mentioned. But it is good for you also to walk through those spaces and make sure that you're checking that everything's safe and accessible in it, and that it will be a good experience for your attendees. Make sure they have accessible gender neutral bathrooms nearby your room that you're using for your event. So make sure that they are close by to the room, that they're not, like if you have your event on the 4th floor, that they're not on the 1st floor, because that will make it more difficult for people with mobility challenges to go to the restroom at any point when they want to. Then talking about some setup, make sure the wheelchair access is correct, as we talked with ramps, but also make sure that you have any doors to your room. Some doors are kind of narrow sometimes, so people in wheelchairs have a harder time going through those doors. So make sure the access is wide enough, that you don't have anything on the way, that if you have a registration table, is not blocking part of your entrance, that you have enough spacing between your stage and your chairs for people on wheelchair to go through there. Then also have chairs that are wide enough, comfortable for people to sit, especially if you're having a long event, and then open spaces for people that cannot sit through the whole event to walk through the event or stand up in the back. And make a note for your presenters or your MC to tell people that it's okay for them to stand up if they need to stand up. Think of any special accommodations you might need. So like, let's say if there is people that will have wheelchairs. Maybe you're having a banquet. Make sure that you're thinking of how are you going to accommodate people that have wheelchairs on your seating, and then how are they going to, where are you going to place them, near to the entrance, near to the restrooms. So think about all those special accommodations that people might have. Also, ASL interpreters, of course, is a special and important thing on special accommodations. If you have someone that needs ASL interpreters and you have an in-person event, make sure that you place them on a spot that it's close to the ASL interpreters. Maybe you can block some of the spaces on the front for them to be close to the ASL interpreters so that they have a better view and they have more accessibility to understand everything that's being said on the event. Then when you're doing registration, ask about any special accommodations need. You can add a question asking specific if you want to know about something like the event that we are having today at late afternoon. We did ask if someone needed an ASL interpreter. So you can ask for specific things, or you can make the question just general and ask, do you need special accommodations? And then of course, make sure that you're going back to those registrations and you are providing those accommodations and not just asking but not providing. Ask for dietary needs. Of course, there are limitations on budget sometimes on what we can serve on food, but make sure that you're covering as many dietary needs as you can. There is some resources that are limited, like vendors, caterers will not accommodate as many as you want. Sometimes they will say, okay, this is what we can accommodate, but try to work with your attendees and your vendors in a way that you can accommodate as much as possible. Keep in mind that when serving food, if you cannot accommodate everyone, you might leave someone out, right? And so think of creative ways of solving that if that's the case. Consider wheelchair seating. We already talked a little bit about that. Something that you can do in registration is ask up front if it's a banquet, if you're having someone that will come in a wheelchair, so that you can reserve a table specific for them and have the chair retire from not place or not set up where that table is and where you expect that person to sit. On science and promotion, make sure on your on any science and promotion that you're doing, you're including the contact information of the person that they can reach out if they have any accessibility needs. But also make sure that if you're providing an email, that you're checking constantly that email so that you provide them feedback and reach out to them and be on constant contact with them. Make sure you have text-based advertisements also. And then directional and food signs. Make sure that if your venue doesn't have enough directional signs to let people know where the elevator is, where the restrooms are, and all that you are providing those directional signs so that it's easier for people to navigate the venue. And then make sure your food is completely labeled. Label any allergens that you might think, like nuts is a big allergy thing, right? So make sure that if you have something with nuts, that you're telling your attendees that this specific plate has nuts.
You're at 7 minutes, Eunice.
Okay. And so then just a really quick on the virtual events, research any virtual event software that you might, to make sure that they provide the accessibility options that you need so that they can do ASL interpreters picture-in-picture and closed captions. Of course, closed captions can be a person doing the closed captions, card, someone mentioned that on the chat, or live transcription like Chris also just recently say, which is not completely accurate. Consider ASL interpreters if your event is too big, have a chat moderator so that they can read the questions on the chat for a person that cannot read, and consider breaks also for both in-person and virtual events with enough time for people to move if you're having an in-person event, but with enough time for people to absorb the information and rest for a little in your virtual events. So that's all what I have. Thank you.
My name is Jen Rosio. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white person with a virtual background of the LGBTQ block, wearing a floral top and black cardigan. And just a little more about my background and myself. I'm a designer illustrator under the name Doreen Rose Design. I graduated from Weber State University with a BA in design for digital media and digital illustration. I started my career as a junior designer at Ken Garff Automotive and joined Equity, Diversity, Inclusion here at the U of September 2022. And personally, I'm a local coffee connoisseur, a vinyl record collector, and owner of a cat, maybe the most beautiful cat named Love. That is on to the left here, my cat Love, a portrait of her, and the picture behind that is an example of my illustration work as Doreen Rose Design. So from personal to professional, I want to talk about the concept for Day of Disability and Neurodiversity and the motif that we use as an example of designing for accessibility to get started. The original design, which is at the top left, is a disability pride flag designed by Anne McGill. But the unique thing about this flag is it was redesigned in 2021 from community feedback, as this was published online. And the original design caused visual strain and flickering effect on web platforms, where the designer McGill took that as an opportunity to learn from the disability community and get feedback to redesign the flag. As you can see at the top is a is a black background with 5 colors in a band of a lightning from the top left down to the top right corner, with the colors blue, gold, white, red, and green. And the below that, is the redesign, which has a lighter gray background with the same colors in a straight diagonal. And I just found it a great example and inspiration to continue to use, as we can extend that from just using it for Disability Pride Month and using it also for our Intersect Times 12 initiative to continue to speak on these subjects all year round. So from there, the colors do have different meanings. The red is for physical disabilities, gold for cognitive, white for non-visible and undiagnosed, blue for psychiatric, and green for sensory. And speaking of color, I'll talk about, I've been here for over 3 months here working with EDI, and I just want to share some things that I've learned, some overlap as well from what the other panelists have talked about. With color, be sure to create clarity with color contrast between background color and type color. To the right, I have a screenshot of one of the resources, webaim.org. It is the contrast checker. So this is an example of a passing contrast ratio. And I'd also recommend viewing a soft proof in color blindness mode in your design programs. And the next slide here shows an example and proof and how to get your proof set up for that. So this is a screenshot from Mac. So I apologize, I don't have the Windows, but in this case, it's Adobe Illustrator. You will go to your toolbar ribbon and go to View and hit Proof Setup, where you can choose either to simulate color blindness with the protanopia type or the deuteranopia type to see what your design will look like with those simulated color blindness proofs. And to note, there are some color combinations to avoid, such as red and green and brown, green and blue and gray, blue and purple, red and black for those with color blindness. In regards to typography, one thing I want to mention is, especially with body copy, you want to aim for considering ADA compliant typefaces, which include mostly sans serif, but we have Arial, Calibri, Helvetica, Open Sans, Times New Roman, which is more of a serif font, Verdana, and Marriott Pro, which is part of our U of U branding and ADA approved. And a good rule of thumb for the sizing, never go below 12 pixels to 16 pixels as a starting point. And in general, sans serif and Roman style. And if you want to go the extra mile, which I hope you do, check to see if they're available in monospaced or fixed width versions. And I cannot give a total crash course on design accessibility. I am constantly learning and growing as a designer here at EDI, but I can push for, using the accessibility tools and guidelines already available. I did show Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Creative Suite programs, which is the standard for design. They've been really great about accessibility in Adobe Acrobat and having the options in InDesign for making sure you can annotate and have captions for your printed work. And as provided a couple times today, the U of U Accessibility Resources website and the document that Angela provided. And really, I want to end by saying actively educate yourself. advocate for the community and share your knowledge. And I think the greatest thing is hearing from other people within the community with disability and following disability activists and designers that share their stories online and out there in the world, and listen to their professional and lived experiences, and share it with your design clients, your classmates in your design classes, and your colleagues on your next project. And with that, that'd be the end for me. And again, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Jen, and thank you to all of the presenters. I am conscious that we're a little further along in time than we want to be, so I will make my closing presentation a little shorter than planned. And the first topic that I wanted to briefly mention was making accessible presentations. And I have listed some small things that everyone who's asked to do a presentation can do to help with accessibility. So one is to ask the organizer about their accessibility practices and the things that we've been talking about that Eunice presented on, that Jen presented on. Are their materials text-based and accessible? They have text-based versions of promotional flyers, for instance, that they're emailing out. Is it in an accessible physical space if it's in person? Will the event be recorded and made available later? Just questions like that to get organizers thinking. And will there be interpreters, ASL interpreters or captioners? And someone in the comments in the chat mentioned CART having communication access real-time translation. That's CART, which is a live person who does the captioning using specific technology. That is a way to get more accurate captions than auto captioning will provide for a live event, either projected on a screen for an in-person audience or in Zoom or other online platforms. So that's another option for accessibility. If there are interpreters or a captioner, providing advanced copies of your presentation, or at least an outline or keywords, can be very useful for them. At the in-person event, you can provide access copies of your script or an outline and include some large print copies of that. If you use handouts, remember to have some large print handouts, but also describe verbally anything that you're handing around. For PowerPoints and visuals, aim for large fonts, uncluttered slides, and again, providing a verbal description of anything you display. For video clips, you want to think about having captions and also verbally describing what is seen on screen to audience members. Especially for a larger audience or in a large space, use microphones. Don't be the person that says, you all can hear me, right? And just talk without a microphone, because people are not going to feel that they can speak up and say they cannot hear you. And often it's not about volume, it's about amplification. So again, in larger settings, especially, microphones are key. And slow down, something I have a lot of trouble with. But if you have interpreters, they need you to go slower so they can interpret clearly. But generally, people process better if you speak more slowly. The last thing, sorry, I realize now I'm not on full screen. The last topic I have here is a kind of disability language guidelines. And I was going to go more in depth with this, but I'll just stick with this slide. A key thing is to use identifiers individuals choose for themselves. So if you're referring to a person and you are able to learn how they describe themselves in relation to their disability, that's always what you default to. When you're speaking more generally, I strongly encourage everyone to use the words disability and disabled. There's sometimes a sense that these are stigmatizing terms, that they are negative terms, but they are terms that have widely been reclaimed by disabled people, and they are preferable to euphemisms like challenged or special. These are, it's a more precise term that signals a kind of relationship to an ableist society, as well as marking that people might need something in that ableist society to shift so they can more fully participate. I wanted to note here that sometimes you will hear person first language, people with disabilities. Sometimes you will hear identity first language, disabled person. Different communities or individuals will choose one over the other. There are histories behind both sets of terms and reasons behind them, but it is perfectly acceptable when speaking generally to use one or the other or alternate between them. But I think it's important to recognize that disability activist communities have widely embraced identity first language, even though it may not have been seen as preferable by others. And so that's something to be aware of, and that will translate to other framings. Someone might prefer person with autism, but increasingly I hear people prefer as a self-descriptor autistic person or autist even. So just be aware of the variances there. There are a number of kind of metaphoric uses of disability language, like blind spots or being tone deaf. And we should always be questioning those terms and finding ways of using more specific and concrete language that doesn't import the kind of stigmatizing or offensive disability terms. So just something else to be aware of. At this point, I will stop sharing. And I will thank all of our presenters for sharing their expertise and wisdom. And again, remind us all that accessibility is an ongoing practice that adapts to different situations in different body minds. No one's perfect at access. Everyone is always learning, and it is a collective and a flexible practice. So I want to move now to questions and discussion. You may post questions or comments in the chat. If you want to ask a question verbally, please raise your virtual hand. And I will call on you in the order that that happens. I am going to start with a couple of questions that came earlier in the chat and then move to anyone who has raised hands, but I'll work my way through the chat too. So I had a question earlier from Andrea to Andy asking when you were talking about alt text, what about on social media management systems like Hootsuite? Which is an unfamiliar term to me. So I don't know if you want to or are able to speak to that question, Andy.
Yes, so I don't use Hootsuite, so I don't know if that's an option, but we use Sprout Social, and I know like Student Affairs has a Sprout Social account, and there is the option to add alt text when you're posting content on Sprout Social. And it's again pretty intuitive there, but I usually post natively though, just FYI. I mean, I just feel like it's better practice. So like for a tweet, I'll post within the Twitter app and it's all right there. But yeah, short answer for Sprout Social, I don't know about the other. There's countless number of social media content management systems, and I'm sure like Sprout's one of the leaders, and I would think Hootsuite would have it as well.
Okay, thank you. I know we addressed hopefully Morgan's question about URLs and the using of camel casing for that. But I also wanted to say, if you're putting text links in, I know Barb addressed, don't just put click here. But another good rule of thumb is to, if you have a link, give it a title rather than just putting the URL into the text, so that someone can hear the title rather than their reader reading out a really long link. So when it comes to putting URLs into your actual text, your website or whatever, it's preferable to create a title that describes where you'll be going when you click on that link, and then embed the hyperlink on that title. There was another question, and then I will come to a couple of raised hands. Pamela asked, what is the recommended smallest font size on PowerPoint presentations? Jen, I don't know if you want to answer that one.
I will have to admit my shortcomings here that if I were designing PowerPoint, I believe probably sticking with the number range I gave. This would be the part where I would discuss this with my boss, Kaya Aman. She's been a great help in helping with resources for accessibility and checking on things on that. So I apologize if this is not the correct answer, but I believe it'd be about 16, and with heading sizes, they'll be different, and body. So again, I apologize for not having a little shortcoming on PowerPoint and design standards for that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, although there's probably a recommended range. But I was finding when I was doing my PowerPoint today, to make it really big, I was up around 36 font size, which is bigger than I would normally do. But I think it makes it a lot clearer. So
I think, if I can interrupt real quick, I think
Yeah,
that
please.
I read that 24 is the magic number, and I could be totally wrong, but that is what sticks out in my memory.
Okay, thanks. And I would recommend Googling it. There is a ton of accessibility resources online. And I feel like part of this event is to just scratch the surface and let folks know that there's so much out there. So also, if you don't have the answer to your question at the end of today, you can do some Googling and you will find lots of accessibility recommendations along those lines. I'm going to go to someone with a raised hand, Jen Wilson.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you so much, everyone. I just wanted to share a resource that Angela, you reminded me, has been very helpful for me to learn more about disability. Blair Amani's book, Read This to Get Smarter About Race, Class, Gender, Disability, and More. The chapter on Get Smarter About Disability actually has a whole section on the ingrained ableist language that we have in everyday euphemisms. And it's what not to say, but even offers options of what to say instead, and offers why we should not say this and where the ableism comes from and the roots of it, but also helps provide different models from the disability community themselves into how to understand, like you said, person first, identity first language. And it's just been a wonderful resource, I think, and I'm happy to share the book name in the chat as well, but wanted to share something that's been helpful for me with others.
Thank you so much, Jen, for that recommendation. Yeah, it's a great resource. There were a couple of questions in the chat about what to do instead of click here, and Claudia's suggestion. So Jennifer asked, would it be preferable to say, quote, click on this link to take you to the whatever website? And then Claudia responds, I think something like click on the resources for accessibility page. And I think that's it. The text that is hyperlinked should be very clear about where someone is going when they click on it. But that's far preferable to it being a URL. So give the page they're going to a title, put the hyperlink into that. And it is visible as a hyperlink to people looking at the page, and it is also evident to the screen reader. If someone jumps through from link to link, they know that they're hearing the title of a link. So hopefully
So if I can interject a little something here, as far as I understand, you don't need to say click on the link. You don't need to include that in the link. So if you're wanting to say click on the link to take you to the accessibility website, you would just link accessibility website.
Thank you, Barb. I think that's what I was trying to say, but very confusingly. So exactly right. It's evident that this is a link, so you don't need to instruct people to click here. They can see that that's a link and understand that if they click on it, it will take them. And it's also evident for someone using a screen reader that that is a link. Jen in the chat asks, does the U have a process or service for getting Braille versions of materials for conference presentations and similar events? And I will hand that over to Chris.
Sure, you can contact me.
I guess I'd like to follow up on that, Chris, because often my understanding is the university has resources and will do that kind of thing. For instance, if I'm a teacher who has a student who is documented through the CDA to receive services and needs Braille versions, that the CDA will provide that. But what about
that's true.
something else?
with, as we are available, are happy to do that service for other departments, colleges, whatever. So we've recently done it. We've done it this semester for a number of colleges. So people can contact me if they have questions about that.
Thank you. Someone is asking to type the name of the book in the chat. So Jen, who mentioned Blair Imani's book, do you mind popping that into the chat for us? So Andy has said in the chat, alt text. If your social media management software does not have an option to add alt text, you can add it after the image has been published in Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. But Twitter does not allow adding or editing alt text after an image has been tweeted. And I will say, once you start trying to pay attention to this on different platforms, you learn that every platform has a slightly different process. And so it's a steep learning curve initially, and also just trying to figure your way through each platform's steps. I think I've covered most of the things that were kind of open questions in the chat. And we have about 10 minutes left. So I would love to invite anyone else to offer comments or questions about any of the topics raised today, or about accessibility or disability supports at the university in general. Any other questions that are that people are eager to share? I see a virtual hand. Jude.
Hi, so I just wanted to say something really quick. So a couple of years ago, I made an effort to follow a bunch of disability activists online, mostly on Twitter, because that's mostly what I use. And over the last few years, I've learned a lot about disability activism. I've learned a lot about my own disability and how I advocate for myself. And I mean, a lot of that does come down to there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of discourse. So very often people don't agree, but it has opened up my eyes to a lot of the conversations that are being had in general and opened up opportunities for me to do my own research and to learn more. And I really would highly recommend doing that. It's a really great way, a fairly passive way of getting more information in a real-time way that you can stay on tabs of new things as they develop.
Yeah, that's a great recommendation, and it's perhaps a prompt for us to include in what the resources we provide with the video, to include some lists of those, because I learn something every day from the disability activists, scholars, and creators that I follow on Twitter. And many of them also do Instagram and other social media platforms or have blogs. And it is a really compelling and exciting way to learn from people who both encounter a lot of excess blockages and barriers in their lives, and who are really dynamic, creative, smart people about how we think about disability. So thank you, Jude, for that recommendation, and we'll try to follow up with that in the resources. Andy.
Oh, sorry, I was unmuted. Jude, is there a hashtag that to follow or to find some of those users on Twitter?
That's a good question. I haven't been able to think of one off the top of my head, but one that I do know of is Actually Disabled. EDS Hive is another one specifically about EDS. That's a connective tissue disorder. Honestly, I would just look up, lists of disability activists to follow and then start there. That's a really great place. People will talk to each other a lot. That's a lot of how I've done a lot of my following, is just word of mouth and recommendations.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. If you put in disability activists to follow, you'll get a bunch of suggestions, all of whom are great. There are a bunch of really great hashtags. Crip the Vote is one of them, which is focused on voting issues that affect disabled folks. Say the word is another one, which relates to, you often have to put in also the word disabled because there's a few different say the word hashtags, but that you get a lot of tweets about why saying the word disabled or disability is important. Elizabeth in the chat is suggesting Judith Human. And for anyone who hasn't watched Crip Camp yet on Netflix, I highly recommend because it gives a glimpse of a history of disability rights activism in the US that is not often taught and known, and introduces us to Judith Human. Jen is recommending Imani Barbarin, who is another great follow and makes a lot of cool videos as well. And Mia Mingus, actually, I don't know if she tweets, but looking up her speeches and her website, her blog that I quoted from earlier, she's really excellent. And there's just hundreds more. So, so many great voices online. We have a few minutes left. Thank you to those who are posting links to those folks in the, oh, okay, Mia Mingus does tweet. Why don't I follow her? All right, so thank you. Yes, and Jude is mentioning in the chat that a big thing in the last few years has been self-advocacy around long COVID. And I think obviously the pandemic and then emergence of long COVID have been very significant for the disability community and are topics that are of great concern to disability activists online, and also impact the kind of work we've been talking about here today, right? You know, we ended up making this an online event rather than in person to be able to provide the greatest access to the greatest number of people. And so thinking about remote access recordings and those kinds of things for folks who are being cautious about COVID and not ready to gather in person, I think is very important for anyone considering access issues. And yes, if you look up hashtag long COVID, another one is NEIS void. NEIS stands for no end in sight, I think. NEIS void. There's a lot of tweets related to, sorry, I'm on Twitter, so that's the platform I think about most, but related to immune compromised folks and chronic illness in long COVID issues. So, you know, once we start to understand these kinds of things as falling under the banner of disability, we come to appreciate how vast that community is. Lori in the chat is saying that, oh, EDI book club meeting. Join the Staff Council EDI book club as we discuss the book Being Human, an Unrepentant Memoir of a Disability Rights Activist. And Lori has dropped the link there to register for that event. Claudia has dropped the link to Crip Camp, free on YouTube. That's right, I forgot that. It's on Netflix also, but free on YouTube. And S. Shiver is recommending Leah Lakshmi Peepsna Samara Sinha. She goes by Leah Lakshmi often, last name Lakshmi for the interpreters. It's a lengthy name, and she's an amazing writer and activist. May use they pronouns. And the book Care Work by Leah Lakshmi is one I recommend. And they also have another recent book, something about disability in the future, but I'm not coming to the title off the top of my head. Hashtag actually autistic was the hashtag I was trying to think of, Jude says. And yeah, there's a whole autistic community on spaces like Instagram and Twitter as well. We are pretty much at time. I hope I was able to communicate most of people's questions and comments in the chat, and thank you for others who shared. So I am going to hand back to Abdul Khalid to close us out.
Wow, amazing, amazing presentations, amazing work. Thank you so much to our moderator, Dr. Angela Smith, and our panelists, Lillian Duong, Barb Iannucci, Andy Landerghini, Chris Green, Eunice Contreras, and Jen Rosio, and our ASL interpreters, Melody Fico and Heather Jensen, for the work that you're doing to ensure accessibility for all. This Day of Disability and Neurodiversity is part of the Intersect ×12 initiative. Intersect ×12 is a reminder that we must strive to honor individuals intersecting identities, not only during nationally recognized months. We encourage you to honor, celebrate, and engage with our communities every day, 12 months a year. As members of underrepresented groups have made and continue to make countless contributions to our campus and community. Intersect ×12 serves as year-round acknowledgement of the work being done to create an inclusive space where everyone feels they belong. Please join us virtually this evening. We have another second event. Please join us. And that event is about campus experience of disability, neurodiversity, and ableism, which will include a student-led roundtable. To learn more about Intersect ×12 and all the work of EDI, please visit our website, diversity.utah.edu. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this lunchtime. And I hope you took some valuable information from this discussion, and we'll move it to make it accessible for all. Thank you so much and have a great day.